Chicago after midnight has a way of shrinking the world into small circles of light. Street lamps reflected on wet pavement, the dull glow of storefronts closing for the night, and the harsh white bulbs of a city bus pushing through the rain like a tired ship at sea. Clara sat halfway down that bus, hands pulled into the sleeves of her thin coat. Her shoulders were tight from 2 shifts back to back, and the smell of cleaning chemicals still clung to her hair. She counted the stops out of habit. 3, then 2. Every block brought her closer to home, closer to her son. The bus jolted, and at the next stop, a man climbed aboard. His steps were uneven, his breath heavy with cheap whiskey. He slumped into the seat directly behind her. Clara didn't turn. She had learned long ago that eye contact with strangers this late could invite the wrong kind of attention. She focused on the dark window. Rain streaked down the glass. Her reflection looked as tired as she felt. The hand hit her shoulder without warning, heavy, unwanted. His fingers pressed through the fabric, creeping toward her collar. "Hey," he slurred near her ear. "You headed home alone?" Clara froze. Her pulse thudded painfully, her breath too shallow. She leaned forward, instinct trying to pull her away, but the hand followed, tightening. And then a second voice, a calm, controlled voice, cut through the rattling of the bus. "Take your hand off her." It wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. The man beside Clara opened his eyes and turned just enough to look at the drunk. Until now, Clara had barely noticed him. A figure in a dark coat, sitting straight, taking up no more space than necessary. Now she saw him with clarity. A sharp jawline, a stillness that didn't belong to ordinary men, an aura of control so natural it felt dangerous. The drunk stared at him, and recognition hit like a slap. "Sorry," he stammered. "Didn't know." "You do now," the man said, his tone flat and absolute. At the next stop, the drunk practically fell out of the bus in his hurry to escape. The bus doors closed. Rain drummed lightly on the roof. Clara kept her eyes forward, breath trembling in her chest. She didn't know what to say. She wasn't sure if he expected anything at all. But the man beside her said nothing more. He simply stood, buttoned his coat with deliberate precision, and stepped off into the rain. For a brief second, she saw him under a streetlight, broad shoulders beneath a tailored coat, posture straight, footsteps measured. A pair of men she hadn't noticed earlier stepped from the shadows to follow him. Not police, not friends. Men who walked like they answered to him. Dante Falcone. She didn't need the news to tell her who he was. Chicago whispered his name in kitchens, back alleys, and in the breaks between conversation, like a reminder of where power truly lived. And he had spoken up for her with a single sentence. Clara's hands shook until she forced them still. She was safe. That was all that mattered. But the echo of his voice stayed with her long after he disappeared. Her apartment was only a few blocks from the stop, a tired building with chipped bricks and a hallway light that always flickered. Inside, the silence felt different, not empty, just contained. It was the kind of quiet that came from a small world lived carefully. A small form lay curled on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Leo, 5 years old, beautiful, deaf since birth. The center of her life. Clara tapped twice on the floor the way his therapist taught her. The vibration traveled through the couch. Leo stirred, blinking awake. His eyes found her, and relief settled over his face. He lifted a hand, fingers shaping the sign she waited for every night. "Mom." Clara breathed out a smile. She signed back, slow but steady. "I'm home." Leo watched her hands closely, always aware when something wasn't quite right. Her thumb flicked a little too far left on the final motion. He hesitated, processing the mistake, but then accepted the message and reached for her. She gathered him into her arms. His body was warm, small, and trusting. She carried him to his bedroom, barely big enough for a twin bed and a tiny bookshelf, and tucked him under the covers. The ASL posters on the wall stared back at her as if reminding her how much she still didn't know. She tried again. "Good night?" This time her fingers moved more accurately. Leo nodded, satisfied. She kissed his forehead, switched off the lamp, and left the door open just a crack. In the kitchen, she practiced flashcards until her eyes blurred. Sorry, safe, proud, love. Sometimes her hands obeyed, sometimes they didn't. Every mistake felt like a wall between her and the boy she loved more than anything. The next morning came too soon. Waking Leo, feeding him breakfast, helping him put on his shoes, packing his backpack with care. She walked him to school, watched him run toward classmates who signed far better than she currently could. A small ache bloomed in her chest. She wanted to be fluent, not for herself, but to be part of his world. She wasn't there yet, not even close. Aurelian was a different planet entirely. The 3-star Michelin restaurant sat in the heart of the city like a polished jewel. Inside, everything was controlled: the lighting, the music, the tone of the staff's voices. Wealth had its own scent. Truffle oil, expensive perfume, fresh flowers were placed twice a day. Clara tied her apron, smoothed her hair back, and blended into the rhythm. She greeted guests quietly, carried plates with practiced care, and kept her head down. Invisible staff for visible luxury. The manager clapped his hands sharply to gather everyone. "Listen up," he said. "We have a VIP coming in tonight. Private dining room, 9 o'clock. You all know the name." A ripple went through the room. Servers exchanged looks. Someone swallowed hard. Falcone. Clara's heart flipped once before settling uneasily. The man from the bus. But she reminded herself he wouldn't remember her. People like him didn't remember people like her. Work through the shift, go home to Leo, practice ASL, repeat. That was all she needed to focus on. Just after 9, the doors opened. Silence moved through the restaurant the same way heat does before a storm. Dante Falcone entered first, tall, composed, dressed in a suit so clean it looked carved rather than stitched. He walked with a confidence that didn't need to be loud. 2 men shadowed his steps, subtle but unmistakably armed. But the most striking presence wasn't Dante. It was the woman on his arm. Isabella Falcone. Elegant. Gray hair pinned neatly, eyes sharp, completely deaf. She looked around with awareness, not caution, like someone who learned long ago that silence sharpens every detail. The manager rushed forward, nervous excitement twisting his voice. "Mrs. Falcone, Mr. Falcone, welcome to Aurelian." Then he leaned in toward Isabella and made the mistake Clara had seen hundreds of people make with Leo. "Can you hear me, ma'am? Do you need water? Still or sparkling?" Loud, slow, patronizing. Isabella's expression tightened. Her jaw set, her eyes flicked away with restrained annoyance. Dante's expression didn't change, but something in his posture did, like a man absorbing a blow he'd absorbed too many times before. Clara felt the moment hit her in the same place where Leo's frustration lived. That look Isabella had, she knew it too well. A look that said, "I am here. I am capable. And you still don't see me." The tray in Clara's hands felt heavier. Her pulse sped. She didn't plan this. She didn't think she could even do it. But something inside her moved faster than her fear. She stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said softly. The manager whipped around. "Clara, what are you doing?" But Isabella wasn't looking at the manager anymore. She was looking at Clara. Clara inhaled once. Her hands came up, and they began to speak. "Welcome to Aurelian. My name is Clara. It's an honor to serve you tonight." Her signing was not perfect, but it was fluent, natural, alive. The room froze. A server dropped a fork. A guest turned their head. The guards tensed slightly, not out of threat, but surprise. Isabella's eyes widened. Then, something shifted. Her entire face softened into pure, unmistakable joy. She lifted her hands and signed back with speed and grace. "You sign, thank you. People usually shout." Clara smiled, finding her rhythm. "My son is deaf," she signed. "I'm still learning." Isabella touched her shoulder gently, an act both grateful and intimate. Dante stood still, barely breathing, watching every detail. He didn't understand the signs, but he understood the change. This was the first time in years he had seen his mother fully herself, laughing silently, animated, engaged. Clara stepped back, lowering her hands, her cheeks warm, but her posture steadier than ever. The manager stuttered through an apology. I didn't know she could." Dante cut him off with a simple command. "She will serve us tonight." Clara blinked. The restaurant manager blinked twice. Even the guards seemed to take note. Dante was still watching her. Not with threat, not with interest, with something closer to realization. As Clara guided Isabella and Dante toward the private dining room, she felt something unfamiliar rise in her chest. Not fear, not anxiety, not invisibility. For the first time in a long time, Clara felt seen. Inside the private room, as Isabella conversed excitedly in ASL and Dante tried to follow her expressions, Clara found herself standing in a space she never imagined entering. A space filled with power, danger, and old secrets. Dante's reputation followed him everywhere. The city told stories about him. How he took over the West Side without firing a shot, how he ended a gang war with a handshake and one silent look. How his enemies feared him more when he said nothing at all. But tonight, he wasn't the man from the stories. He wasn't the man from the bus. Tonight, Dante Falcone was simply a son watching his mother come alive and watching the woman who made it possible. Clara didn't yet know what this moment would cost her, what doors it would open, what dangers it would pull her into. All she knew was that in a city full of noise, her hands had spoken the one language that truly mattered, and someone powerful had seen it. The restaurant emptied slowly that night, like a stage after the final applause. Chairs were pushed back in, candles snuffed out one by one, silverware polished for the next day. The city outside moved on, but inside Aurelian, one person stayed behind. Clara. She wiped the last table in her section, the motion automatic. Her mind was still in the private dining room, with Isabella's bright eyes and Dante's unreadable stare. The manager appeared beside her, nerves buzzing under his skin. "Clara," he said, tugging at his tie, "Mr. Falcone asked to speak with you, in the small office." The cloth in her hand stilled. "Now?" she asked. He nodded. "Now." Clara's first instinct was fear. A man like Dante Falcone didn't ask to speak with people like her without a reason. She had stepped out of line in front of his guests. She had touched his mother's arm. She had interrupted the manager. What if he saw that as disrespect? What if protecting her on the bus had only been a reflex, and this was something else entirely? Her palms were damp by the time she reached the office door. It stood half open, a quiet invitation, or a trap. She stepped inside. The room was small, lined with shelves of wine lists and reservation books. A single desk divided the space. Dante stood by the window, hands in his pockets, coat off, shirt sleeves rolled up just enough to show a watch that cost more than her yearly rent. Isabella sat in a chair near the desk, posture relaxed, hands resting lightly in her lap. She looked more at ease than anyone else in the building. Clara swallowed. "Sir?" she said softly. "You wanted to see me?" Dante turned. In this cramped office, without the echo of the dining room or the weight of an audience, he seemed more human, but no less dangerous. The controlled presence remained. The eyes that measured everything remained. Isabella signed something quick and teasing in his direction. He gave her a small look, the kind sons give mothers when they are being publicly nudged, and then focused fully on Clara. "You did something important tonight," he said. Clara blinked. "I just served your table." "No," Dante replied. "You gave my mother back something this city keeps taking from her." He looked at Isabella as he said it. Pride and regret fought quietly in his gaze. Clara's heart thudded once. She glanced at Isabella. The older woman lifted her hands. "I like her," Isabella signed, with a faint smile. "She listens." Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. She translated automatically, still a little unsure about speaking for a woman like Isabella Falcone. Dante's jaw relaxed by a fraction. "Good, then this makes it easier." He stepped closer to the desk. "I want to make you an offer," he said. The word offer, coming from his mouth, carried a special weight. Stories in the city had wrapped themselves around that word for years. Clara stood straighter, fingers curling against her apron. "I don't need more shifts," she said quickly. "I'm grateful for the job I have. I don't want to cause trouble with the manager." "This isn't about the restaurant," Dante said. "This is about my mother." He paused, considering his words. "She has had interpreters before, professionals, certified, trained." He looked at Isabella again. "None of them made her smile the way you did tonight." Isabella raised an eyebrow as if to say, "About time you noticed." "I want to hire you," Dante continued, "not as a waitress, as my mother's personal interpreter and companion." The word companion landed gently but carried something more. Trust, access, visibility. Clara stared at him. "You want me to work for you?" she asked. "At my home," Dante said. "At her appointments, her meetings, wherever she needs a voice." He glanced at her hands. "You have that voice." Clara's mind raced. Her rent, Leo's therapy bills, his specialized school. The stack of debt she pretended not to see. "I don't have official certification," she said honestly. "I'm still learning. My signing isn't perfect." Isabella signed again, firm this time. "You are good. You care. That matters." Clara translated. Dante nodded. "My mother approves," he said. "That is more important to me than any certificate on a wall." He named a salary. The number hit Clara like cold water. She could pay off what she owed. She could move to a safer building. She could buy Leo the hearing aids insurance refused to cover. She could breathe. She also knew exactly what kind of world she would be stepping into. The kind where a wrong move could get people killed. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "You have people. You can hire anyone you want." "For once," Dante said, "I want someone around my mother who makes her feel understood instead of managed. You did that without being asked. That matters to me." He held her gaze. "I won't lie to you. My world is not simple. It is not safe. You've already brushed against it. On the bus, tonight. That will not change." He let the truth hang there. "If you say no," he continued, "you keep your job here. I leave you alone. No harm, no pressure. If you say yes, I expect loyalty. In return, I will make sure you and your son are protected." The mention of Leo made her stomach flutter. "How do you know I have a son?" she asked. He gave her a look that answered everything without a word. Men like Dante did not step into people's lives without knowing who they were. He had probably known Leo's name before she walked into this office. Clara looked at Isabella. The older woman watched her with an expression that held no coercion, only hope. In Isabella's face, Clara saw years of people talking around her, over her, about her, while never learning her language. She imagined Leo at 50. In a world where even his mother never tried to close that gap. "I'll need time to adjust my schedule," Clara said slowly. "You'll have it," Dante replied, "and more money than any schedule here can give you." She exhaled. "All right," she answered, "I accept." Isabella smiled broadly. Dante inclined his head once, like a man closing a deal, but something softer lived under the gesture. Clara left the office that night, no longer just a waitress. She walked out as a bridge between a crime boss and his mother, between two worlds that had never been properly connected. She had no idea what kind of weight that bridge would soon be asked to carry. The Falcone estate stood on the edge of the city, where the skyline blurred into older brick and quieter streets. High walls guarded manicured lawns. Cameras watched every approach. On her first day, Clara stepped out of the black car sent to pick her up and tried not to let the size of the house swallow her. Stone, glass, dark wood. A mansion meant to impress strangers and intimidate enemies. The front door opened before she could knock. A housekeeper led her down a wide hallway lined with paintings, landscapes, portraits, abstract pieces. Every surface spoke of money, but what Clara noticed most were the sounds. Or rather, the lack of them. No music, no television, no careless chatter. For a house full of staff, the atmosphere felt controlled to the point of tension. They led her to a sunlit sitting room. Isabella sat by the window, a book open on her lap. When she saw Clara, her face lit up. "You came," she signed. "Of course," Clara answered, smiling. "Thank you for trusting me." From that moment, Clara's days changed shape. She accompanied Isabella to medical appointments, to charity luncheons, to small family meetings inside the house. She translated conversations that had once been filtered through strangers, costly professionals who never stayed long enough to become real. Isabella told stories about Italy, about Dante's father, about the early years before power hardened her son's face. Clara grew more fluent simply by keeping up. The language flowing faster now that it was tied to a real life, not just flashcards on a kitchen table. In the evenings when she returned home, Leo watched her sign with a new curiosity. She still made mistakes, but fewer now. Their conversations grew longer, less frustrating. For the first time, she felt as if she was catching up. But in the corners of the Falcone mansion, not everything was mending. Some things were breaking. Clara encountered him for the first time in a side hallway, a man leaning against a column like he owned the air around him. Nico, the Shade, Vetrano. You didn't need to be told his nickname to understand why people used it. He moved like someone who preferred the edges of rooms, the places where sound carried less and secrets carried more. His suit was nearly as sharp as Dante's, but his eyes lacked the same steadiness. They scanned, calculated, judged. He watched Isabella and Clara walk past, an amused tilt at the corner of his mouth. "So you're the new favorite," he said casually. Clara stopped. "Excuse me?" she replied. He pushed off the column and stepped closer, but not enough to invade her space, just enough to let her feel the weight of his attention. "The sign language girl," he said. "The one who made the old lady laugh. You did good. The boss sleeps easier when she smiles." He said, "The boss?" with the tone of someone who had earned the right, but was testing how long that right would last. Clara held his gaze and kept her tone polite. "I'm here for Mrs. Falcone," she said. "That's all." "Of course," Nico replied. "Just remember something." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "In this house, attention is expensive. When the boss starts paying too much of it to one thing, he pays less somewhere else. People notice. People talk." The warning sat inside the compliment like a blade wrapped in silk. Before she could answer, he flashed a quick smile that didn't reach his eyes and walked away. Clara watched him go, uneasy. Isabella touched her arm. "Ignore him," Isabella signed, rolling her eyes. "He loves his own shadow too much." Clara smiled, but the tension stayed. Men like Nico did not waste words, and they did not like sharing the focus of powerful men. When Dante was in his office, the house took on a different temperature. His office was deep inside the mansion, near a study that smelled of old paper and stronger whiskey. The walls were lined with shelves. A large desk dominated the space. This was where power was counted, sorted, and weighed. Clara seldom entered that office. She often sat with Isabella in the adjoining reading room, while Dante handled business with his lieutenants. Their voices rose and fell behind the door. She couldn't hear the words, but she could feel the tension through the wall. On one such afternoon, the tension snapped. The office door flew open. Dante stormed in, followed by Nico. The air around them crackled like the moment before a storm breaks. Clara and Isabella were in the reading room just off to the side, the doorway slightly ajar. They stayed where they were, unsure if leaving now would draw more attention. "You cost me a shipment," Dante said, voice low but intense. "Do you understand what that means?" Nico spread his hands. "I warned you, the docks are watched. You insisted on going through with it." "I insisted based on the numbers you brought me," Dante shot back. "The numbers were wrong." Nico's tone stayed smooth. "We lost one crate. You've survived worse." "It wasn't one crate," Dante said. "It was a message. Someone knew exactly where to hit us." The room pulsed with danger. Even without seeing every gesture, Clara felt it. Isabella watched silently, eyes narrowed, absorbing everything without sound. Dante turned away from the desk, pacing to the far shelf, shoulders tight. Nico watched his back. For 2 seconds, Dante's eyes were not on the room. For 2 seconds, his hands were not on his desk. For men like Nico, 2 seconds was an opportunity. He moved with the speed of a practiced thief. Clara almost missed it. Isabella did not. From the reading room, they saw Nico's hand slide open a specific drawer in Dante's desk, the motion casual to the point of invisibility. He pulled out a thick ledger, a leather-bound book, and swapped it with another one already hidden under his jacket. The new book went into the drawer. The real one disappeared into his coat. The entire act took less time than a blink. Nico closed the drawer just as Dante turned back. "We can fix this," Nico said, voice smooth again. "Let me talk to the captains. They trust me. They're worried about your distractions lately." It wasn't just a remark. It was a shot. Distractions meant Isabella. It meant Clara. It meant anything human. Dante's eyes chilled. "We'll meet," he said. "All of us. You bring your reassurance. I'll bring facts." He walked toward the door, passing the reading room. Clara lowered her gaze, staying out of his way. Nico lingered a moment longer, his gaze drifting briefly toward the reading room as if he sensed eyes on him. Then he followed, leaving nothing but quiet behind. For a heartbeat, the house held its breath. Then Isabella turned to Clara. Her eyes were cold, sharpened by a lifetime of reading what others missed. She lifted her hands. "Snake," she signed. One word, all edge. Clara didn't need further explanation. She had just watched a man frame his own boss with a sleight of hand so subtle that no hearing person in that office noticed. No one but a deaf woman, trained by silence to trust her eyes over everything. The next days felt off, like the city's balance had tilted. Clara kept working with Isabella. Dante grew more distant, spending long hours in his office or out at meetings. Nico's presence thickened in the house. He spoke more with the staff, smiled more, watched more. Rumors moved fast in their world. The docks, the lost shipment, the bad numbers. Clara didn't know details. She knew tension. Late one night, after she'd already gone home to put Leo to bed, a closed-door meeting unfolded in a different part of the city. Far from the mansion, far from any official place. A long table, a dim room. Men who wore suits but walked like they remembered rougher clothes. The capos. Nico placed the forged ledger on the table. "This is what I found in the boss's desk," he said. "Hidden. Kept from us." The numbers inside were clear. Withdrawals that never matched known expenses, transfers to unmarked accounts. To someone who didn't know they'd been faked, it looked like theft. The capos studied the pages, their faces darkening. "Dante has always honored the code," one of them said slowly. "No stealing from the family." "Look closer," Nico replied. "He has changed. Ever since he brought that waitress into the house. Ever since he started moving like a man with something to lose." The words were chosen carefully, not a direct attack on Isabella. Not yet, but enough to paint Dante as distracted, compromised. Doubt crept into the room, not loudly, but deeply. Nico played his part well, loyal, pained, reluctant. "I bring this to you because I have served him for years," he said. "If he has lost his way, we must protect the family, even from him." The code was simple in theory, harsh in practice. Loyalty, honor, no betrayal from within. If the ledger was true, Dante had broken that code. The capos did what men in their place always did. They demanded an explanation, 24 hours, one chance to prove they were wrong. After that, the code would speak, in blood. The next evening, Dante stood in his office, the forged ledger open on his desk, his jaw tightening with each turned page. He had seen real numbers all his life. He knew when something rang false. The paper in front of him was a loaded weapon, aimed at his chest. The capos had come earlier, their faces hard, their voices dry. 24 hours, they said. Bring us proof this is not yours, or accept the consequences like a man of honor. When they left, Dante remained alone with the book and the weight of his own reputation. Everything he had built now stood on a fault line he hadn't created. Isabella and Clara arrived at the mansion that night to an atmosphere so thick with unease that even the staff moved differently. Fewer glances, less small talk, more silence of the wrong kind. Clara found Dante in the office, the desk lamp casting sharp shadows across his features. He looked older than he had a week ago. "Sit," he said. She did. He pushed the ledger slightly toward her. "Do you understand what this is?" he asked. "Your records," she answered. "No," he replied. "This is what they will use to kill me." He explained the ultimatum in simple terms. No theatrics. The 24 hours, the accusations, the implied sentence. "They think I stole from them," he said. "They think I used my position to take what belongs to the family." "Did you?" Clara asked. She needed to hear it from him, clean. He held her gaze without flinching. "No," he said. "I've done many things in my life. That is not one of them." Outside the office, Isabella entered quietly. She saw the ledger. She saw her son's face. She did not need to hear words to understand danger. Clara's mind raced back to the 2-second movement in this very room. Nico's hand, the drawer, the switch, and Isabella, silent, watching. "You know who did this," she said. Dante answered without hesitation. "Nico." "Then tell them," Clara said. "Tell the capos what he did." "With what?" Dante asked. He tapped the ledger. "He holds the paper, his word against mine, on numbers they already see. They trust proof, not stories." Clara looked at Isabella. The older woman's eyes were steady. In that moment, Clara understood something simple and terrifying. The only real proof they had was not written, it was seen. By a woman the family respected but had never truly listened to. By a woman the traitor had dismissed as irrelevant. Dante's phone buzzed. He picked it up, listened, then hung up. "They're moving faster than I thought," he said. "Nico has men watching the house, watching you, watching your son's school." The words hit Clara like a physical blow. "Leo," she whispered. Dante stood, decision already forming. "You're taking your son and leaving the city tonight," he said. "I'll have a man I trust drive you. New names, new place. You stay away until this is over." His control slipped for the first time since she met him. "You did nothing to deserve this," he said quietly. "I brought you into my house. That makes what happens to you my responsibility." Fear for Leo flooded her so completely that for a few seconds she couldn't think past the urge to run. She saw her son's small hands, his posters on the wall, his slow trust building each day. Leaving meant ripping him out of school, out of routine, out of the life they were finally stabilizing. But staying meant putting him directly in the path of men like Nico. She looked at Isabella. The older woman watched her son, then Clara, reading both of them. Clara's phone vibrated in her pocket. A message from the sitter, Leo is asleep. Everything okay? No. Nothing was okay. Yet in this room full of numbers and threats, one thing felt solid. Isabella's memory of Nico's theft. Clara met her eyes. We saw him, she said to Dante. In this office. He switched something in your desk when you were turned away. Dante's attention snapped to her. Are you sure? He asked. Isabella lifted her hands and signed, each movement sharp and precise. I saw him. Your back turned. Ledger and drawer. Ledger out. New one in. Real one hidden. Clara translated word for word. Dante listened, his jaw tightening with every phrase. Where did he put the real one? He asked. Isabella signed again, recalling every detail. Small cabinet. Right side. Secret space. Same type as in your office. Dante pictured it instantly. A specific style of liquor cabinet he favored. There was one in his office. There would be others in his properties. Nico had counted on no one watching. On sound drowning out movement. On the fact that his world trusted ears more than eyes. He had forgotten about Isabella. Dante's mind shifted from cornered animal to strategist. But before he could speak, Clara did. Running won't clear you, she said. If you disappear, they'll believe everything Nico says. He'll inherit your world, he'll have your men, your money, and he'll keep hunting anyone who knows the truth, including us. She took a breath, feeling her own fear tremble but not break. You need to show them what Isabella saw, she said. Not tell them, show them, in a place they respect, with all of them present. The capos don't listen to performances, Dante said. They listen to facts. Then give them a trial, Clara replied. On your ground, with your mother as the witness. No guns, no shouting, just what happened in front of everyone. She thought of the restaurant, of the moment everything started. At Aurelian, she said. Where this began, neutral enough, formal enough. They know the place. You call a meeting there, bring Nico, bring the ledger. We bring Isabella. Dante stared at her as if seeing a different version of the woman from the bus. He saw the fear in her. He also saw the spine under it. Capos don't run trials, he said. They take votes. Then give them something to vote on that isn't forged, Clara answered. Let them see the truth with their own eyes. They're men who read body language for a living. Let them read hers. Isabella nodded firmly, signing, I am not afraid. The room held that sentence like a light. Clara's phone buzzed again in her pocket. She ignored it this time. Dante looked from his mother to Clara and back again. In all his years building a kingdom out of fear and silence, he had never once thought that the person who might save his life would be the elderly deaf woman he spent a lifetime trying to shield, and the shy waitress who spoke her language. Call them, Clara said quietly. Tell them you want one last meeting. At Aurelian. Tonight. Dante picked up the phone. For the first time, he would stop trying to solve a problem with threats, with money, or with bullets. This time, he would gamble everything on something else. On a mother's eyes, on a waitress's courage, on the power of a language that didn't need sound to tear down a lie. The call went through. Dante didn't look away from Clara as he spoke, voice low and controlled, each word chosen like a man arranging pieces on a board he no longer fully commands. Aurelian, midnight, everyone, he listened. Then, no, not tomorrow, tonight. There was a long pause on the other end. Capos didn't like being summoned on someone else's terms, but they also weren't accustomed to hearing Dante Falcone's voice stripped of its usual armor. Good, he said. We settle this face to face. He ended the call. Silence pressed into the room, heavy as the rain starting to fall outside. Clara felt Leo's heartbeat against her palm. He had wandered from the bedroom half asleep, drawn by movement and tension. She held him close while Isabella signed something. Slow and firm. This ends tonight. The night suddenly felt colder. A black SUV arrived minutes later, tires slicing through the slick pavement. The headlights carved long shadows across the walls of the Falcone estate as Dante stepped outside. Coat pulled tight, shoulders squared like a man walking into a storm with no umbrella. Only resolve. 2 guards moved to flank him, but he raised a hand. Not tonight, he said. This has to be clean. Clean. In a world where clean rarely meant peaceful. Clara stood at the top of the steps with Isabella. The older woman placed a steadying hand on Clara's arm. Will you be safe? Clara asked Dante. No, he answered honestly, but I'm done running from a man who hides behind forged pages. He opened the car door, then paused. For what it's worth, he said softly, thank you. Clara nodded once. We'll be there. His gaze drifted to Leo, small and drowsy in Clara's arms. Something shifted in Dante's eyes, a flicker of a feeling he rarely allowed himself. He gave a short nod and stepped inside the SUV. The car disappeared down the long driveway, swallowed by the dark. Clara drove her own small car behind the second escort vehicle assigned to them. Leo slept in the back seat, soft breathing, a reminder that her world was fragile but real. Isabella sat beside her, hands folded tightly, eyes focused forward. The city moved around them, neon lights, late-night crowds, the pulse of a place that didn't sleep because it couldn't afford to. Between streetlights, Isabella's hand rose. "You are not just a witness tonight," she signed. "You are our courage." Clara didn't feel like courage. She felt like a waitress driving toward a room full of men who could end her with a single wrong word. But she didn't look away. "So are you," Clara signed back. Isabella smiled, small but real. Aurelian sat at the corner of the street like a polished jewel dropped in a rough part of the night. Its windows glowed with warm amber light, an oasis of controlled elegance against the city's restless dark. But tonight, something was different. The entrance was empty. The host stand was unmanned. Chairs were stacked, lights dimmed. Only the private dining room at the back blazed with light. It felt like walking into a courtroom built for a kingpin rather than a judge. Clara entered with Isabella beside her. Two guards stepped forward. Clara's breath caught, but they simply nodded, acknowledging Isabella with respect reserved for matriarchs. Past them, past the final hallway, the room opened. A long table. 12 capos seated like a panel of judges. Nico standing near the far end, posture confident, hands clasped loosely behind his back. Dante at the head of the table, alone. The air felt sharp enough to cut skin. Nico glanced at Clara and Isabella, an amused smirk forming. "You brought your waitress?" he said. "And your mother?" "Dante, I expected desperation, but this is embarrassing." Clara didn't flinch. Dante didn't look away. "She's not here to talk," Dante said. "She's here to show you the truth." One capo leaned forward. "Then get on with it." Dante nodded to Clara. Her throat tightened. She looked at Isabella. It was time. Clara stepped aside. Isabella walked to the center of the room, spine straight, chin lifted. For a woman who had spent years being dismissed, ignored, or spoken over, this moment unfolded like a stage meant only for her. Without a sound, she began. The capos watched, expecting weakness. Instead, they saw precision. She mimed Dante pacing, shoulders tense. She mimed Nico standing behind him. She mimed the drawer, the hidden motion, the swap. Quick, deliberate, exact. She mimed the smirk. She mimed the slight tilt of Nico's head as he tucked the real ledger away. Every gesture clear, every beat undeniable. Clara translated only where needed, short, clean phrases. She saw him take the ledger. She saw him replace it. She saw where he hid the real one. The capos leaned forward, hardened expressions shifting. These were men who read body language for survival. A lie had a scent. A truth had a weight. Isabella's truth hit the room like a hammer. Nico stiffened. Not much, but enough for trained eyes to register the crack. "That's quite a story," Nico said, voice sharpening. "What proof? A deaf old woman's performance?" It was a dangerous sentence, and a stupid one. Older capos exchanged looks, offended. Disrespect toward a Falcone matriarch was a grave misstep. Isabella didn't flinch. She lifted one hand, then pointed to the liquor cabinet in the corner. The same style as Dante's office. Dark wood, 2 doors, polished handle. Dante's heart hammered once, but he stayed still. A senior capo rose, slowly, deliberately. The room followed him with their eyes. He crossed the floor, opened the cabinet, felt behind the bottles, and froze. His hand emerged holding a leather-bound ledger, the real one. The room shifted from slow confusion to full clarity in a single heartbeat. Nico paled. "That," he started, but the capos slammed the book onto the table, flipping it open. Real numbers, real accounts, real transfers, none pointing to Dante. The forged one was placed beside it, open, exposed, false. Everything Nico built collapsed. Capos lifted their eyes one by one. Dante did not need to speak. His silence said enough. Nico exhaled a slow hiss. "You think this changes anything?" he said softly. "You think they'll choose you over me when all this is done?" No one answered. A signal passed through the room, silent, unanimous. 2 guards stepped forward behind Nico. His smirk faltered. He turned toward Dante. "This isn't over," he snarled. Dante finally stood. "It is," he replied. "You just didn't hear it." The guards took Nico away. The door shut behind them with a thud that rippled through the table. No gunfire, no shouting. Just the quiet end of a man who thought he could rewrite a kingdom with a forged book. When the room emptied, Dante stayed at the head of the table, hands braced against the wood, breathing slow and deep. Clara approached cautiously. Isabella walked straight to her son. He looked at his mother with something broken open inside him, something that power had never been able to fix. "You saved my life," Dante said to Isabella, voice low. She touched his cheek and signed with gentle firmness, "You never saw how strong I am. Now you do." Dante swallowed hard. Clara looked away, giving them space, but she felt the moment like heat on her skin. This man the city feared more than its storms, stood humbled by his mother's truth. When Isabella stepped aside, Dante turned to Clara. "You didn't have to help me," he said, "but you did. You walked into danger for someone like me." Clara met his eyes. "Not for you," she said softly, "for her, and for Leo, and because truth deserves a voice, even a silent one." Dante exhaled a quiet laugh, pained, relieved. "You're braver than you think," he murmured. "You're quieter than people expect," she replied. A rare, fleeting smile crossed his face. It vanished almost as soon as it appeared, but its warmth stayed in the room. "Go home," he said. "Take care of your son. I'll take care of the rest." And Clara believed him. For the first time since stepping into his world, she believed he could keep her safe. Not through threats, not through power, through gratitude, through change. As she and Isabella walked out of Aurelian, the storm outside had eased, the rain thinning into a soft mist. The city no longer felt towering and loud. It felt waiting, like something new was about to rise in the space where fear had once lived. Outside Aurelian, the city had quieted into a cold, cautious hush. Clara breathed in the night air as she stepped onto the sidewalk, Leo asleep against her shoulder, his breath soft against her collarbone. Isabella walked beside her, cane tapping lightly, posture steady. They had barely reached the corner when Clara's phone vibrated. A text from Dante. "Go home safely. Do not open the door unless it is my man. I will send someone I trust." She typed back without thinking, "Are you safe?" A pause, 3 dots blinking, then, "For now." Those 2 words sat heavy in her chest. The drive home felt longer than usual. The streetlights stretched into long streaks on the windshield, and Clara caught herself checking the rearview mirror every few seconds. The city seemed too large, too dark, too capable of holding the wrong kind of eyes. When she reached her building, one of Dante's men stood under the flickering hallway light, broad shoulders, watchful posture, nodding once as she approached. He didn't say his name. He didn't have to. Clara carried Leo inside, locked the door, and leaned against it for a moment. Safe. For the moment. Isabella stayed for another hour, calming Clara not with words, but presence. A steady hand on her arm, a soft smile, a silent promise, "You are not alone." When Isabella finally left under escort, Clara tucked Leo into bed. Her hands were shaking too much to practice signing, so she just sat beside him, tracing the curve of his cheek. Tonight she had walked into a room full of men who made the city tremble. Tonight silence had saved someone's life. Tonight she had chosen truth over fear. But tomorrow? Tomorrow was still unknown. Dawn crept through the blinds like a soft, reluctant apology. Clara woke early, nerves still knotted in her stomach, and reached for her phone. 3 messages from Dante, all short, all restrained. "Nico is handled." The capos accepted the truth. "No threat to you or Leo now." Her breath left her in a slow exhale, but something in the tone felt unfinished. She typed a reply, "Are you okay?" This time he answered quickly, "Come to the house later. My mother asked for you." Of course she did. Clara dressed Leo for school, walked him to the door, knelt to his height and signed slowly, "Have a good day. I love you." This time her hands didn't stumble. Leo grinned back, signing fast and confident, "Love Mom." The sign landed warm and solid in her chest. The Falcone mansion looked different in daylight, less ominous, more like a fortress that had seen the worst but was still standing. Inside, staff moved with a new energy, more relaxed, less guarded. News traveled fast, even without anyone speaking of it. Clara found Isabella in the sunlit sitting room, wearing a soft shawl and holding a cup of tea. When she saw Clara, her face split into a proud smile. She signed immediately, "You did well." Clara returned the sign, "So did you." Isabella laughed silently, motioning for her to sit. A moment later, Dante entered. He looked changed. not physically, but lighter. Like a man who had spent years bracing for an impact that finally came and didn't break him. His suit jacket was off, shirt sleeves rolled just slightly. He looked less the infamous Falcone boss and more like a tired son who had survived a sleepless night. "Clara," he said quietly, "thank you for coming." She nodded. "Your mother asked for me." "She did," Dante said with the smallest smile. "But I asked too." Isabella gave him a pointed look, half amusement, half push. Dante ignored it in the way adult children often ignored parental nudging. "Walk with me," he said. Clara hesitated, then followed him into a hallway lined with framed photographs, far more than she expected in a house ruled by shadows. Pictures of Dante as a boy, Isabella younger, smiling softly at something outside the frame. A man Clara assumed was Dante's father, sharp features, stern eyes. Dante stopped by one photo of his mother at a piano, hands poised above the keys, eyes closed as if listening to something she felt rather than heard. "She used to play for hours," Dante said. "My father hated the noise. I used to pretend to hate it too, just to stay on his good side." He exhaled. "She never held it against me." Clara didn't interrupt. She sensed something shifting, something Dante didn't share with many people. "When my father died," he said slowly, "I took over everything. The business, the decisions, the enemies. I became the man the city expected me to be." He glanced at her. "But I stopped being the son my mother needed." Clara folded her arms loosely. "You didn't see her strength," she said. "No," Dante replied. "I saw her silence and mistook it for fragility." They reached his office doorway, the place where everything had started to unravel. Dante paused. "I survived last night because she watched what the rest of us ignored." He shifted his gaze to her. "And because you believed her." Clara's breath caught for a moment. Dante wasn't a man who thanked easily. Not because he lacked gratitude, but because expressing it meant revealing the parts of himself he'd kept armored for years. "What happens now?" Clara asked. Dante let a humorless laugh escape. "Now? Now I rebuild trust with a group of men who wanted me dead 12 hours ago. I tie off loose ends. I restore order." He turned toward her fully. "And then I do something I should have done years ago." Clara frowned slightly. "What's that?" His eyes softened in a way she had never seen. "I learn the language my mother speaks," Dante said. "For real this time. Not because I need something from her, but because she deserves that from me." The moment hung between them like the quiet after a storm. Clara felt her chest tighten, not from fear, but something warm. "Good," she said. "She'll like that." Dante nodded slowly. "And Leo," she added, "he'll see that adults can learn it too, that it's not a burden, that it's normal." His gaze shifted, thoughtful. "He's a good kid," Dante said. "Smart, watchful, strong." Clara's heart squeezed unexpectedly. Real praise for her son was rare. "Thank you," she whispered. Dante didn't reply. He didn't need to. Weeks passed. The mansion softened. Staff smiled more. Isabella grew brighter, more herself. Clara became part of the daily rhythm, interpreting conversations, helping Isabella with appointments, guiding her through events where people still spoke too loud, too slow, or too condescendingly. And Dante kept his promise. He practiced ASL every morning, sitting across from Clara with the seriousness of a man negotiating ceasefire terms. He made mistakes, big, clumsy ones that sent Isabella into fits of silent laughter, but he kept trying. He learned, "Thank you," fingers stiff. He learned sorry, jaw tight. He learned mother, with a reverence he didn't put into words. One morning, Clara watched him sign a simple sentence to Isabella. "I missed you." Isabella touched his cheek with both hands. In that moment, Dante Falcone looked less like a crime boss and more like a son finding his way back home. But Dante wasn't done. One afternoon he called Clara into the dining room. The table was covered in brochures, draft paperwork, and architectural sketches. Clara blinked. "What is all this?" Dante stepped aside. Isabella signed proudly. "Your idea, your courage, for others like us." Dante gestured to the sketches. "A community center," he said. "A place for deaf families to learn, gather, and support one another. Classes for parents, resources for kids, interpreters, therapists, everything your son deserved from day one and everything my mother should have had." Clara stared at him. "You're building this?" She whispered. "I already bought the property," Dante said. "I funded the project, and I want you to run it." Clara's breath caught. "Me?" she asked. "Dante, I'm not." "You are," he said simply. You walked into danger for my family. You've walked through fear every day for your son. You learned a new language without help. And you've helped my mother reclaim her voice. He stepped closer, expression steady. You're the only person I trust to lead this. Clara couldn't speak. Her throat tightened too much for words, so she signed instead, slow but deliberate. Thank you. Dante's hands lifted. He answered in ASL, awkward, too slow but clear. You deserve this. Isabella clapped silently, smiling. 3 months later, the Isabella Falcone Family Deaf Center opened its doors. Sunlight streamed through wide windows. Bright murals decorated the walls, painted by deaf artists from the community. Families filled the hallways, children signing excitedly, parents learning to answer. Leo tugged at Clara's hand, eager to explore the play area. His signs were quick, confident, full of joy Clara had fought for. At the back of the room, Dante stood with Isabella, watching quietly. He didn't wear a suit that day, just a simple shirt, sleeves rolled. For once, he looked peaceful. When Clara finished greeting families, Dante approached. Isabella nudged him. He lifted his hands, slow, careful, determined. Thank you for helping us speak. The sign was imperfect, but heartfelt. Clara felt something warm bloom in her chest. She answered, we all learn together. Dante's eyes softened, something rare, something real. Leo raced over and wrapped his arms around Clara's waist. He looked up, then signed brightly, Love, Mom. Clara knelt, pulled him close and signed back, Love you too. When she rose, she found Dante watching the exchange, not with envy, nor with distance, but with hope. A quiet hope, the kind that takes root only after storms have passed. The kind that grows in places where silence once felt like a cage and now feels like home. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If Clara, Dante, and Isabella's journey moved you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next inspiring story. Your support helps us bring more powerful, emotional journeys to life every day.